Reconnected Voice Journey Podcast. Your voice is your medicine.
Welcome to the Reconnected Voice Journey Podcast with me, your host, Francesca J. Littman. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the voice in its many different forms, from how we express ourselves in the world through our speaking voice and singing voice, to the stories and words we tell ourselves and others, to the voice of our intuition, the voice of nature, the voice of divine guidance, and so much more. The intention of this podcast is to offer you inspiration and hope as you embark on your own unique journey to reclaim all aspects of your voice and to build trust in the immense power that already lies within you. As we travel on this journey together, I'll be talking with inspirational guest speakers, as well as sharing my personal stories and experiences on the path of my own journey of reconnection with my voice, plus some useful tips I've picked up along the way. It's with great pleasure that I welcome today's guest, the inspiring Katie Holland of Awakened Bellydance. Katie is a sacred dance therapist, professional dance artist and energy worker with a passion for self-empowerment and self-initiation through conscious movement. A soul awakening at the tender age of only 7 activated Katie's soul mission and led her to create the movement therapy Awakened Bellydance. She's currently based in Egypt, where she's researching the revered blue lotus and its effects on dance and natural DMT activation. Katie has lived and danced her way around the world with her family since 2006, performing for celebrities, royalty, and corporate groups, while studying with masters of cultural dances, tantra, shamanism, yoga, dynamic meditation, and energy healing techniques. So welcome to the show, Katie, and thank you so much for being here. Oh, that's great.
Thank you for inviting me.
With absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
So from everything I've learned about you thus far, it certainly seems to me that you've lived an extremely heart-led life from a very early age, which is, again, like I say, from everything I've learned about you thus far, it seems to be abundantly rich with just amazing experiences. So with that in mind, the name of the show is the Reconnected Voice Journey podcast, and the intent is to explore the voice in its many different forms. So that's not only in the ways we traditionally think of, but in terms of all forms of expression. So I'd like to know, what does the phrase reconnected voice conjure up for you? And based on your own life experiences, what does it mean to you personally?
Okay. For me, I think of it in a more holistic way. So the voice, our spoken voice, and how we can step into our self-empowerment and sovereignty through creating boundaries for ourselves in our lives, and being able to say no when we want to, being able to say yes when we want to, and not feeling that we're being forced either way into anything. And then also the voice of our soul, the voice of our body, and how that moves us, which might not necessarily be with a sound, but from that inner voice or that internal guiding light that we have that is always speaking to us, and the communication that we can have with our body. So it could be something that's as simple or seemingly simple as saying, okay, body, how are you today? What do you want to eat for breakfast? What would serve you best in what I feed you to start the day with? And this is something that I practice myself, and it's a huge part of my work as well in supporting people to find that trust in their own bodies to also do this.
Oh, wow, I love that answer. And yeah, as you say, it's actually very simple, isn't it? But we don't necessarily do it. I mean, I notice so many times that my body is talking to me and I don't necessarily pay attention, that sort of thing when you're feeling tired and you're working on the computer, you maybe got a bit of backache, but so, no, I'm just going to get this done, but you're not actually listening to or you're maybe aware of it, but you're not paying attention. Or as you say, just asking, what what do I actually really need for breakfast? And I know that I go in and out of stages in my own life when I feel more connected than other times, and I find it easier to listen to those voices. But yeah, and it seems to me such a core part of our existence as well. I mean, when children are born, like little children, they move naturally, don't they? And they know what they want, or if there's something they like or they don't like. There's nothing unnatural about how they use their voice in the world, is there?
Yeah, exactly. And this was something that I kind of encouraged with my children. I mean, now they're young adults now, and but I would always say to them, if they said they had a bellyache or they didn't feel very good, and I'd say, okay, what's happening in your body? Ask your belly what's going on today. And when they got, kind of high school age, they'd be a bit, oh, mom, and but then I always remember my son when he was about 16, and he was in England and I was somewhere else in a different country, and he messaged me saying he'd had this really bad stomach ache, and I said, oh, okay, what's happening? And then he said, don't worry, I already asked my belly, and this is the answer that I got. And I thought, oh yes, it's it was so sweet the way that he said it, and it surprised me so much because of his age, and yeah, it was just really lovely to think that, okay, they remember. And yeah, so I think it's so important that we listen to this inner voice, and also that we know how to differentiate between the many voices that we have within us. That you could say is the lazy voice that is, okay, I should be doing this, or I'd like to get on the cross trainer today. And then you've got this voice like, oh, but it would be so nice to just watch this next series on Netflix and I can do it tomorrow. and so it's the not having the control. I don't mean it in a way of like, right, I'm controlling myself, but having the discipline and knowing the tricks that you play with yourself with these voices to be able to differentiate and say, okay, is it that I do really need to rest and lie on the sofa today? Or is this me self-sabotaging myself in something that is actually really beneficial for my body? And then, I mean, that's an easy example, you could say, of everyday life. But yeah, then there's like many voices, and this is something that I really learned from studying Gurdjieff's work, and he talks about the I's, like the I am, and it's all very connected with the ego and with the masks that we wear and these different versions of ourselves that we present to the world. So I've been excavating this in myself of okay, what are these voices and when do they come into play? What patterns are they running, and when do they come up in certain situations or with certain people? And what you could then put into a group as just internal chat, monkey mind, but within that monkey mind there's a gold mine of information.
Oh, I love all that. And I think the example you gave is really, I think it's a really powerful example because it is so simple. And I think it's something that so many people can relate to in terms of that, the sort of Netflix sofa or, go do exercise.
Yeah.
But I think, there's so many experiences that we have just even on that level in our lives if we really listen and have that awareness like you just shared about, then it's really an invitation to go a little bit deeper. And if there is self-sabotage, sort of what's that about really, and to explore the self on a much deeper level. And I love what you shared about like your kids. I mean, what an amazing gift you've given them to encourage that sense of self-inquiry, to check in with themselves. Because, I know, like, for example, with food, My dad, bless him, like well-meaning and everything, but there would be a lot of forcing to eat foods that I didn't like or didn't feel right, or trying things. And it became a real, there's something inside yourself that says, no, that's not right for me. And that you have done that in the very opposite way, to really give that. It's an empowering, it's empowering, really empowering for your children to be able to go through life checking in with themselves and knowing. And I'm sure that also has a ripple effect for so many other things in their lives. I mean, I'm sure you've given them a huge wealth of what's the word? Well, just tools really to move through life. But even that one tool alone can lead to so much more of self-understanding and knowing your voice, what's really your voice.
Yeah, with my daughter, she grew up going to school in India and Bali, and then went to England to finish her GCSEs. And one day she messaged me and she said, I don't know what's wrong with these people. And I said, what do you mean? What people? And she said, oh, the children or the teenagers in her sort of friendship group. And she was saying it's all drama. It's about, this boyfriend, this girlfriend, they're breaking up, and just endless dramas and fighting. And I said, okay. And she said, I can't stand it. Nobody communicates with each other. And they don't just sort it out by having a conversation. It's all this arguing and ignoring. And she said, I can't stand it. I just go off on my own at the lunchtime and let them deal with it themselves. So this, speaking about everything now, it just reminded me of that as well. And feeling that, oh, wow, she did really take on board what I had spoken to her about, or to both of them about growing up, and what I'd encouraged with talking about how they feel and more conscious communication.
Well, that's a really, really powerful example of how we can use our voice, how we can, even if we've not necessarily had that upbringing ourselves as parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles or whatever, how we can actually, contribute that to whoever those children might be, to give them that space, particularly when they're young. And it must make so much difference. If I think of I notice it now, like the level of drama that happens, like people talking, but nobody actually, everyone's talking to talk or get their opinion across instead of listening. But your daughter at that young age just had that awareness. That's pretty amazing. And I can imagine that will really support her throughout her life in terms of, relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, choosing the right people for her to be with that are really aligned for who she is.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other hand, if I'm meeting any of her friends or anybody, and she says to me, do not speak about emotions, you're not going to make them cry. We're just doing something really simple and meeting up and going for a walk or something like that. Don't start doing any emotional things with them. And I said, well, I'm just talking to them about asking about their life. And she said, you know what I mean. So I always get these strict instructions about that.
If it wasn't that, it would be something else with a teenager, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine that's also difficult as well, because you've got your true voice and your understanding where you come from, but also trying to maneuver with other people and to find that way to fit in.
Yeah, and I've really found as well that the more I've connected with everything, always comes back to connecting with ourselves and with our wisdom within our body. So you don't necessarily have to be doing something that's considered therapy. It could, or be in a session. It could be just a normal everyday conversation, but the effect of either the resonance of your energy or of your voice and the way that you say things does have an emotional effect on people, and can bring things up in them very spontaneously. And in the strangest of places, like somebody asking you, where's the gate to get on this flight? Are you going the same way? And things like that. And as you're walking with them, they just start crying in the airport, and it's been for 2 minutes. And so I found that this kind of thing happens a lot. And with the people that have studied with me, they've found this because the energy that they're carrying and the that communication, the bodily communication creates a spark in other people's bodies and emotions to release and interact in that way.
Yeah, wow. I love that. That's really, really powerful. And yeah, it is so true. And I was just recently had a conversation with Annie Williams, who has been working with sound for, well, I think she's been working with others with sound for like the last 30 years, but I think she's been exploring herself for like 50 years or thereabouts. And we were just having this conversation about the power of the voice and how just by when you start to speak already, so much information is being received by the other person just from the way that you speak. So it's like the voice is really, it's a reflection of it's really a reflection of your soul when we're fully connected, but it also can be a reflection of what's happening within you emotionally. It shows where you are. And it really gives indicators to other people about, for example, are you a safe person? And I love that. I love that story you shared.
Thank you.
But yeah, like I've seen it myself as well. Sometimes people just seem to gravitate like it's safe to speak here. And it's just simply by, obviously your energy, your presence, but also just something within, just, it can be mundane words, like you say, that you just use everyday language, and yet that gives that opening for others. Really fascinating.
Yeah, and also I think maybe for people listening, they might think, oh, I could never do that. That we're both teaching what we teach and trying our best to walk our talk, and have really worked on ourselves a lot for that. However, this is possible for everybody. I feel the first step is opening this dialogue with their body, and this opens so many gateways. And then imagining the world if everybody was coming from that place, and how it's beyond words how beautiful it could be, because there wouldn't be this conflict and the masks. People would really feel the resonance of each other and know each other on a soul level immediately.
Yeah. Wow, I really got goosebumps when you were talking just there. I was just like, wow, yes. And, for me, this is also like, part of my mission in life. One of the reasons I'm here is to, obviously it's for myself to really deepen. It's, lifelong journey to deepen into my voice in its many different forms, but also to support other people in really coming into that space within themselves with their voice. Because the more that we do that, the ripple effect is huge, just by one person making one small change within themselves to really listen to what's going on, listen to their intuition, for example, listen when somebody's speaking, and to trust there's something in their body that's saying, oh, this is important, or whatever it is. And just by paying attention to that, the way that they respond to that can have this massive ripple effect to open doorways for that other person or for those other people. And that goes out. It's like, when I remember, like, I think one of the things that has really always inspired me was when I was maybe, I think, 19 years old. And I just was, I think, just generally, life was not super easy, and life was a fight, and it's not that life was terrible, but, I wouldn't necessarily be walking around the supermarket with a smile on my face or whatever. Like, now I'm really conscious of this, but there was, I was in the supermarket queue, and I went to the checkout, and there was this young girl who was really chatty and really smiley. And it's just, that made such a huge impression. Her being herself, her smiling has stayed with me for, I'm now 39 years old, nearly 40. And it's really stayed with me, just the impact that we can have just by smiling at somebody, just by really smiling from the soul, how that impacts, it has in many ways totally changed my awareness, so that I go out and now I'm really conscious when I smile at people, smile from inside out. And that's a way of speaking without words. It really is so powerful.
That's so lovely. Yeah, very, very powerful. And it expands on what we would think of maybe, or our first thoughts of what the voice is.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many different depths to it.
Yeah, truly. So we could be talking for a very, very long time.
I think so.
I would love to move on to the next question, which I like to ask. So I'd really love to hear a personal story relating to your journey with voice, and again, in whichever form that takes for you, which is maybe a moment when you've perhaps experienced a sense of disconnection with your voice, or whatever form that took, and the journey that you took to reclaim that and to step back into the power of your voice.
I had many huge things happened when I was 7, and one of them was a disconnection from my voice and being able to speak up, and this also went along with being able to cry, and just generally expression was really disconnected till I was about 15, and I don't really think I cried from that age, from 7 to 15. And one of the memories that I have around that was around hearing people talk, not to me and my sister, but hearing people, the adults in the other room, you could say, at Christmas parties and things. Because me and my sister were both dancing from when we were 3. She's 2 years younger than me, and very expressive. We would put on little shows and impose it on whoever came round to our parents' house, and singing, dancing, everything. And suddenly it was like I just lost my voice, and I would hear people talk about us and say, "Oh, Katie's so studious and quiet," and that my sister, "Oh, she's definitely going to be on the stage. She's got all of it: the acting, the singing, the dancing." And I would feel, yeah, but I want to dance. I wasn't so interested in the singing and acting, but I really felt that I was going to be a dancer. And so it, in a lot of ways, I can't really remember, but I know that it had a big effect on me. And in a feeling of, okay, well, if they're saying this, that means I can't do it. I can't sing and I can't act. And so I pushed everything into dance. And I found out years later that in my astrological chart, I've got a very strong alignment to be able to do all 3. But I guess because of overhearing these talks, I put it all into dance, and I think at that point my voice became much softer generally. So now, even when I speak, people often say to me, "Oh, your voice is very soft and relaxing. It's very quiet." But this doesn't always help if I'm teaching a big group of people. So, and I find it quite difficult to project my voice. And I thought a lot when I looked at the questions. This was the one that really struck me, I think, out of all of them. And I was thinking about the times, say in India, when I was dancing live. It was live on TV, going out across India and Asia, the Middle East. And of course I would be nervous, but I had no problem with it because it was a communication through my body. But if somebody had said to me at that moment, "Okay, now you're going to speak, here's the microphone," I would have run away. It would be completely unimaginable for me to do that. And I remember thinking, even at that time, why is it so different? And I think a big part of it was because I felt if people heard me speak, they could see me into me even more than they could when I was dancing. Because there's still, when you're performing, you're in that performance space and have a performance mask. Even though you might be dancing from your heart, you've still got the makeup, you've got the costume, and there's a persona. But for me, it was really, if I speak, they'll know me, or they can see more into me. So this was one thing. And I would say working with my voice and solar plexus, throat chakras have been a lifelong mission of that they've really been the things for me that I've had to pay a lot of attention to. And I think also connected with being seen, and the way that I feel comfortable speaking more one-to-one with somebody, or if it's in a big party of people, and realizing that if I am in a party and I can get up on a table and dance, I have no issue with that. But if it's to get attention of everybody and say, hey, okay, we're going to sing happy birthday to the birthday girl, that would be really difficult, and people wouldn't hear me because, again, this softness. So I've really had a polarity with it. And also I'm just remembering that when I was a child, I had this catchphrase of "look at me," and this would usually involve, as a photo was being taken, I would pull my top up, or I would, and this is for when I was like, really young, kind of 5, 7, 8, or whatever, and it was like, look at me, and then I would start to dance, or I would start to do something. But yeah, photos, it was very much about just go pull my top up. And I mean, I had no boobs. I didn't have any boobs at the time.
Bless you.
Yeah, there was definitely something that then shifted as I got older, from look at me to see me. And rather than there being it wasn't from a way of showing off it. It was like I wanted to be seen. I think there was something, because of the things that happened, and that all led to this awakening that I had when I was 7. I definitely needed to be seen in a way that the world wasn't seeing me, or I needed the world to hear me. So yeah, this is one aspect. And then later on, just a few years ago, it was after I'd been in a dance training, and as you know, this is another modality that I facilitate. So that I've taken several trainings in this myself. And after one of them, it wasn't that I couldn't speak, but at the same time, I couldn't speak. There was such a rearrangement of my brain and an alignment of everything that there weren't any words. And I spent quite a few weeks in that state of just total nonverbal communication, or very, very basic. And again, I realized that the communication for me was coming through my body with Awaken Bellydance. And because, especially in the English language, there's a real limitation on expressive words. And the longer, I left England in 2006, and I've definitely noticed a decline in my language and the vocabulary that I use. So, I mean, even vocabulary being so many syllables, it's like, oh, okay, this is something unusual. and then that also reflected in the way that I teach, because I'm often teaching people whose first language isn't English. So I've had to really adapt in the way that, how do I get this energy work, or this transformational work across to people in a way, in a very simplistic way, and that also doesn't create a spiritual elitism that, you have to know the sort of dictionary of English to be able to get it. And then I thought, why do I need to speak when I can do it through my body and people can feel it and they can see it? So in a long roundabout way, I feel it all links to what was happening when I was 7, and how my communication became more embedded in my cellular body, and also then learning to speak when I need to speak, because I think I was then in the other extreme as a teenager of chat, and I loved to talk as much as possible, and through classes and any moment I could talk. And then this gradually changed again, and thinking, all right, what is this needless chat just to fill space and to feel not feel uncomfortable with silence, and then knowing, okay, what's the right moment to speak, and in that right moment having the words that are like an arrow. You don't need to make this huge long explanation, she says, as she's taken 20 minutes to answer the question. But how can you say it in one sentence? That was the conclusion I came to. So, but you've opened the gateway with this podcast.
It's so true though. Like, I've been really exploring, particularly recently when I was shifting into this space, when I was wanting to bring this to birth this podcast, basically, just really exploring all these different ways of looking at the voice. And obviously for a podcast, the intention, as it's explained to you before we got on here, I'm bringing this podcast as something people listen to instead of watch, because I think that we're completely overstimulated with our eyes, and I want to invite people to really listen into the deeper meaning of what's being said. So obviously we've got the podcast, and we're using a lot of words to communicate, and at the same time I really hear you about that, that journey you've taken from talking to just actually finding the words that are most important to say. I love how you describe it, like as an arrow, because I've also spent I've started traveling in 2009, so basically, and then I lived in the Netherlands, and then lived in France, and I can really relate to what you're saying about sort of language there. So for one thing, how your own language kind of deteriorates, or maybe, I don't know if it's deteriorated, but I don't know if it's expanded as much as it would be if I was always around lots of people in England using lots of different vocabulary. But just, I think we learn to, when we're with other languages, we learn to listen in a different way. We learn that there are certain words that have different energies that you can't find you cannot translate the energy behind that word into a different language. It's unique to that language. And I remember when I'd only been in the Netherlands, I think maybe 1 or 2 years, and for the life of me, I could not speak Dutch, had no idea what people were saying. But, I could pick out words here and there. But I remember sitting in circle and listening to people talking. And even though I didn't know what they were talking about, I could feel the essence underneath. And I realized just how many words we actually tend to use to get to an essence that's actually very, very simple. So it's really, I find it really fascinating what you've been sharing, and also coming to that sort of understanding we don't necessarily always need words. I mean, words can be a way of connecting, but I think sometimes words can also create a disconnection, because there's so much words and there's not enough of actually going into that feeling place. And I think it's beautiful how, although you weren't able to use your voice in the way that you that you felt that repression of voice, but that you were able to be shifting that energy through your body. And now you're, exploring this. And this is really why, I think for the reason this is the Reconnected Voice journey is because I think all of us are on a journey with our voices. We're not going to reach the end point until we reach the end of our lives, because life is always going to be throwing different things at us. We're going to be having different experiences. We're going to discover different parts of ourselves. We're going to go deeper into ourselves. And each experience, each step is a new delving into what the voice is.
Yeah, and also how our words are like spells and hypnosis.
Oh, yes.
And we can hypnotize ourselves. Yeah, and when you look at the media these days, it's there's a whole lot of spelling going on, and how we can hypnotize ourselves with the words that we speak internally or externally, and then how we can hypnotize each other as well. And almost like an illusionist, look here or listen here while I do this here. It's there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around words and the way that we can use them. And I think this is also why I try to keep things really simple and just boom, okay, it's this. And and then there's no question about it.
Yeah, I think ultimately, the energy does speak louder than words. It's the voice, the energy is the voice. That's the true voice that comes through when you're teaching or just interacting, or, walking around a shop or a marketplace or whatever. The energy is the voice that people really are hearing and that they're drawn to.
I wanted to share something as well, and this has been for myself and again for people who have studied with me, because we're using the voice to facilitate as well as movement. And I remember when I first started to facilitate inner dance, and I was terrified for the speaking part, and I didn't have any problem with the energy touch or anything like that. But to have to speak, and in the end I thought I just have to open my mouth and let the words flow, because it's coming from my soul. It's not me speaking, and it's not my ego that's trying to have an agenda and control this. I have to allow myself to do it. And this was a huge learning for me, and I'm always saying to other people in trainings the same thing, because they say, how do you know? I feel, even though there's 20 people in the room, I feel like the words that you're saying are exactly relevant to me. And then I'm saying that I have no idea what I said. these words or these expressions are coming out, and it is me speaking, but it's coming from my soul to your soul, and then the energy of the group together as a collective linking. I'm speaking a soul language, and then again I might use words that in everyday life I wouldn't use. And so the more that I was facilitating within a dance, and then Awaken Bellydance came into being, and sort of takes up most of my I would call working life, if you like, or passionate life. And I realized that when I'm facilitating, the words just flow, and there's no stuttering, there's no thinking. It's very present and in the moment. But then when I'm in everyday life and maybe having conversations, there is more of a like, it's almost feels like there's so much building up within me that is the soul talk that wants to come through. And I'm just trying to talk about, I don't know, my favorite dinner is chips and hummus. but within that, it's there's not that that resonance in the same way. So the words get lost. And now I feel like I'm going blah, 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 and like I'm being a great example of what I was trying to explain. But there's definitely a difference in this, and also in the way of how comfortable I feel talking to somebody, or how comfortable they feel talking to me in everyday life, as opposed to facilitating world. And so then it's almost like everything, not that I feel that I'm facilitating constantly, and I wouldn't want to be either, but it's like allowing that expression to come through.
Yeah, I totally get you in that, because I used to feel terrified of speaking in front of people. Singing, well, it was a journey to get me singing, but at some point when I got over certain things, and singing was fine, but the idea of standing up in front of people and talking, just no way. But I think also my journey into the energy work is what has really helped me to have trust in my voice, because I get that thing of when you're doing that work and you open your mouth and again, that thing, what did you say? No idea. I don't know. Like if somebody told me what I just said, I would probably recognize it. But because you're just you're being that conduit for what really needs to come through, the words that are the right words to communicate the energy so other people can interpret it. They just flow through. And yeah, of course it's such a different experience to just navigating everyday life. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So you talked a little bit about your work. Could you just briefly share something more about it and how it ties in with the theme of reconnection with the voice? I think we sort of already covered that a little bit, but if you can just expand on that a little bit, that would be great.
It can go into many possibilities, or I would say every possibility you can imagine and not imagine. Is constantly surprising me of what shows up in people. And I guess I can give some general themes of what it can work with and what's shown up. So there's what I think of as the everyday life, so connecting with relationships and current relationships, whether this is with a partner or with family. And then this can also go into ancestral healing and looking at the patterns within families, or often where people are very empathic and they've taken on the responsibility and the healing of their family, and when they don't necessarily need to. And I think this is something with highly sensitive people, or starseeds, or crystal indigo people, however you want to use a label, is that we're often born feeling like we're here to save the world, and that the responsibility of everything and everyone is on us. And
I'm laughing at that because yep, totally relate to that.
And when you realize that actually, okay, you're here to play your part on this world stage, and I really love this word synarchy, that it means like a honeycomb, everybody, or like a beehive, everybody has their role, like their part to play that is unique to them, and at the same time it all interacts perfectly. So nobody's above each other, no one's below. There's a collective consciousness and a communal way of working that's empowering to everybody. And as one person becomes more empowered or self-realizing and for themselves, it has that ripple effect again. And instead of being, okay, well, I'm going to be above everybody, they're also bringing everybody with them. And I feel very strongly that this is so important, especially in the world today, that it's about co-creation and and each realizing what our soul mission or our soul path is, and really living that, and also coming out of the fears that we have around it. And this is something I'd say 99.9% of people who come to me, they're afraid of their own power. And because if you think through epigenetics, they've shown that we're carrying all of the experiences of our ancestors, at whatever level that might be. So of course we're carrying a massive amount of fear, and usually all our ancestors are dead. So whatever they've done, ultimately it led to their death. So whether this was in a very relaxed way, and often not. So we're carrying all of this, and what is our ultimate fear? It's of death, because there's a massive disconnection with death. And so for us to step up and speak out and be who we came here to be, of course it takes us into fear, and that if we do this, we could die. So I work a lot with people on this, and also what people might think of as past lifetimes, but I think of it more as quantum lifetimes, and that it's not in a linear path of past, present, future. It's more of a spiraling and simultaneous lifetimes or versions of us that we've created in our own personal universes. So how to integrate those, and then also for people with their businesses, there's so many ways, and then of course as well, a lot of people come that have experienced sexual abuse as children, or they've been raped when they've been older, and because this is also so prevalent for men and for women, and also because of the connection with the sacral and the throat, this is a big part in people's voices being shut down, and
absolutely,
and going back to the being able to say yes and no, and so working with people feeling safe, and that they're safe in their bodies, and also because when people have experienced trauma, whether it's their own or they're picking it up from the collective or from ancestors, it's much easier to be out of your body and not have to deal with real life, and not have to feel. And so I really support people to be in their bodies, and again, feel safe, that it's okay to be here and take your place on this earth, because you've chosen to do that, and you have this physical body to do that with. So why not work with him or her to the utmost possibilities that you can do? So there's all kinds of things, and then it can be addictions as well. The list is endless.
Wow.
But my really, I guess, what gets me excited about it is the more out there stuff. So the kind of quantum lifetimes and soul contracts, and the interdimensional work. Because I feel that this is really the key. When you're working on that level, the issues of everyday life suddenly become much, much smaller and easier to manage, and you don't have to manage them. They just start to rearrange themselves. So I like going to the root of the root, I call it, like what's behind that and what's behind that, and okay, get into what's really hidden and unconscious.
Oh wow, I love that. Well, all of it. I'm sort of seeing this, like the root of the root, and then the root of the root of the root, and I can see how that works, and just on so many different levels. And wow, and there's so much wisdom in everything that you've just shared, even without doing any of the work, just going into all these different layers of it. I mean, it's really, really amazing. I've had like the tiniest, tiny taste of what you do, but yeah, I know that I would like to explore this more at some point, because it really is just really fascinating. And we can do so much inner work, or sort of spiritual work, but actually we came here in bodies for a reason. We've got the body.
Exactly.
And I notice sort of so much of what I've done on my spiritual path, I mean, I do work with the body, because when you're singing, for example, or speaking, it's about the connection with the body, it's about the connection with the breath, but still it goes so much deeper, when we start to move the body, going into that place and seeing where we've hidden something within the body, where we're holding it. And yeah, it's very interesting. You're talking about like the sort of the ancestors and what's in our DNA. And I was just thinking about the body and how so my mum was adopted, and we just last year, I mean, she was 72 last year, and we just found her birth family over the course of the last year, about a year ago. Actually, it was April of 2021. And just seeing pictures, and my mum looks very much like her mother, and also her eldest sister, who just turned 80 this year. And my mum had a chance actually to meet her last year, but even though she lives in Canada, we live in France, so it was quite remarkable. She got to have that experience. But just seeing also, even just in the way that people hold themselves, looking at the pictures, the way that they hold themselves, the messages that are in the body. And I was just thinking about that, how, what you were saying about what we hold within our within our DNA, and just to watch even just those postures and different things that can tell you so much about that person, what that lineage is carrying.
And it's all like a computer. It's all programs, and then are those programs working for or against us? And how, if we're aware of them, how we can make them work for us as well, and draw on that. And I just wanted to add as well that I'm coming from a place with the different things that I explained about that are possible to work with, and more, that is coming from lived experience of myself. So as you've probably found, that with people that come to you for singing, there's always a mirroring that's happening, whether it's obvious at first or not. And sometimes it's like, oh God, okay. And then it can be so something that's so close to home, because it might be something that you're also dealing with at that time, or have recently dealt with. And I know that people think that who they consider as therapists or teachers are sometimes a bit on a pedestal, and think that you don't have any issues in your life, but actually it's dealing, the people that have dealt with themselves and are dealing with themselves continuously, who are the real deal, the ones that are really walking their talk, and know about this stuff because they've gone through it themselves. They've done that ancestral healing and continue to, and have looked deeply into their own issues. And where those things sit with them.
Definitely hearing you in that as well, because there's the singing work, but also the other elements of all the different voice work that I do, and I really see those mirrors. That I think that there's an understanding. People come to you as a teacher in whatever capacity you're teaching. They come to you because there is that kind of resonance, and I think that builds a connection as well. So I think a lot of the time the teachers who I don't want to say, because it would suggest that other people are not effective, but I think the ones that are somehow very, very effective in helping you with that very specific thing, they're maybe a couple of steps ahead of you. They've dealt with it. They've gone there. They've been with it. And then they're going to maybe another layer of that, or there'll be something else. And
that's it. Exactly.
Yeah, but I think it is very important, as you say, because so often we look to people doing things and we just, I was actually thinking about this today, about how we kind of, particularly in this age of technology, that we see this one persona of somebody and we kind of put them, as you say, up there on a pedestal, and we forget that they're human in a way, because everything becomes 2D and we forget that actually we're all just human. We're all just finding our way. We're all on our own personal journeys. And some of us have easier journeys than others. Some have harder. Some are, some have a fairly, just a gentle meandering path. Others are sort of like, going up and falling down mountains and whatever. But we're all human. We're all human on this journey. And yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. So, do you have any words of wisdom that people could take away? I'd love some words they can take.
Okay. What just came to me was about shadow work, and I know it's a bit of a buzzword as well at the moment, and also people shy away from it a little bit too. But I think that, and definitely what I've learned in myself, is that the shadow work is the key to everything. And the more that you can go into this yucky stuff of yourself, the more light shines in. And then you can learn to work with your shadow, because all the time that we're repressing these parts of ourselves, it takes so much energy to do that could be used in other ways if the shadow was allowed to integrate and step forward. And this has been a huge journey for me, and still, just in the last week something came up and I thought, okay, this is now the time to really get into this once and for all. And I think it's really to say, don't be afraid of your shadow. And don't hide your light. Be the light that everybody needs to see right now and hear right now, and join your light with others.
Wow, thank you. That's very beautiful wisdom, and again, something I can really, I totally second that.
Yay.
Yeah. So, if listeners would like to find out more about your work, where can they find you?
So if you put Awakened Bellydance into various platforms, you'll find me. So there's a YouTube channel. The website is awakenbellydance.com. Instagram, also Awaken Bellydance. And on Facebook, there's various groups. There's a community group, and then my personal me, Katie Holland, and then YouTube. There's lots of free sessions on there, and there's other interviews as well. And especially, I didn't mention about Kundalini. If people are interested in this, I specialize a lot in Kundalini integration and how to work with Kundalini for your creativity, and lots of magical Kundalini things in a very grounded way. And and then I'm starting this year, thankfully I can travel like we all can, starting to travel more again. So I'll actually be teaching in France in July.
Oh, really?
Yes. I can't actually remember which area of France. I think it's about an hour from Paris.
Okay.
and we're just putting together all of the the advertising. But I think in the next few days the information will be out.
Oh,
so France in July, and England in September. I'll be there for 3 weeks teaching in different areas. And And then online in May, I've got, in June, I've got a Dance of Ra webinar. And this is on the summer solstice, so 21st. And I've been working a lot, like you mentioned about the Blue Lotus. So working with the hieroglyphs and my interpretation of dance and sound as well from the hieroglyphs and the different instruments and the energy or the alchemy that's contained within them. So I've been exploring this with different choreographies. Like I've done dance of Hathor, dance of Sekhmet, and then this one is the dance of Ra, which is all about light and the sun. So I thought, okay, summer solstice, this is the day. And then I'm working with the Blue Lotus to because this is activating the third eye and how I can connect my body with the energies of these Neteru, or gods and goddesses, but it's deeper than gods and goddesses. It's consciousness, different archetypes of consciousness. So yeah, this is very interesting, and my new passion in working.
Wow.
And yeah, and then the 31st of May, I'm doing a talk for Steve Noble. He has an entrepreneur starseed networking meeting, and which I'll be sharing the links on my website and everything. I think they're there already. And this is about how to create and run a business on a shoestring. And it's from my life experience of having no business background at all, or marketing or anything, and how I've done what I've done through my life to date, and sort of tips and tricks about that. And then I offer one-to-one sessions online, so for personal development and distance Reiki, and again, everything is on the website. There's lots of descriptions. So and then I have a mailing list, so people can connect with that through the website as well.
Oh, great. Wow, it's all sounding fascinating. So what I'll do, so for anyone listening, you'll be able to find the link to Katie's website and various links so that you can find her here as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And of course, Egypt, being in Egypt as well. There's lots of retreats happening here later in the year. So,
wow. It's Egypt is definitely on my wish list.
Yes. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So Katie's very kindly organised a special gift also for the listeners. So do you want to just mention something about that before we end?
Yeah. So there's two gifts. They're for pre-recorded courses, and some of them were live webinars, and we recorded them, and some I recorded as a course. So one is for a course that's called Abundance, and this is very much connecting sacral third eye and working with your creativity and Kundalini, as I mentioned before. And it's a whole course working through the chakras and looking at how you can bring more abundance into your life. So whether this is financially or love, all the abundance the universe has for you that you might not be taking up, it's opening the pathways to bring that to you. And it's a really beautiful course. So there's the abundance course, and then I have a bundle, which is a monthly subscription, and there's a discount for 3 months on that. And that includes a multitude of various talks and workshops, and there's all kinds of different things in there. So they're bargains.
Brilliant, thank you.
Bargain Awaken Bellydance experiences.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, the abundance one, that's also a voucher that people can use for a discount, is that right?
Yeah. So there's two vouchers. One is for the abundance course just itself, and then the other one is for the bundle.
Fabulous, great. So we'll find a way to link those so people can find it. So thank you, Katie, so much for this conversation. It's just been fascinating, and as seems to happen a lot with these conversations, I think we could continue for a very, very long time. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom, and also wishing you a lot of success with all of your upcoming ventures, like this year and beyond, and just spreading your light in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, and I wish the same to you as well.
Thank you so much.
Very, very abundantly.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to listening to the other podcasts too.
Thank you for listening to the Reconnected Voice Journey podcast with me, your host, Francesca J. Littman. If you'd like to learn more about my work and how I can support you in building a more loving and empowered relationship with your voice, check out my personalised one-to-one Reconnected Voice Journey program options on my website, www.francescajlittman.com. You can also connect with me on social media. On Facebook, you'll find me as Francesca J. Littman, and you can also join my private Reconnected Voice Journey group. And on Instagram, you'll find me as Reconnected Woman. Tune in next time for more Reconnected Voice inspiration.
Reconnected Voice Journey Podcast. Your voice is your medicine.